the amazing part of us being designers is that we're all slightly different, right? The way you get different designs out of people is different ways of thinking and stuff. But for me, it's a huge foundation as to what I do, because I find it very, very difficult to design without some sort of why and some sort of story, because it kind of allows me to stay on track. As a designer, you get the joy of sort of having imposter syndrome a lot. Am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right things? But by kind of having that why and that story from very, very early on, it allows me to counteract any questions my mind might take me and go, no, this is my concept, this is my story.
Hey, welcome to Space by Stansons. Today I'm sat with Jordy Dent, creative director at Area, and you're B Corp.
We are B Corp.
Totally should be mentioning this, shouldn't I?
There's a I don't know, there's a bit of a grey area as to whether we were the first B Corp D&B company, so I'm going to stick with that and go, yes, we were.
Definitely,
because Duncan had this as really won't forgive me if I don't say we were. So I think there was a bit of a grey area, but we were one of the first, if not the first.
Yeah, nice. So you're B Corp, Area, and you're based in Windsor.
Based in Windsor, yep, in the regions.
And that's a beautiful office.
It's a wicked office. It's a great office. London and Windsor are both amazing spaces, so.
I know. I do love London. Like, of course, I work here and I'm here, and everything about London is amazing. But whenever I'm in like Windsor, I just feel like I'm in this like tourist. Like
it is, yeah. It definitely is.
I suppose it should be, but it's so pretty, and
it's a great place, and we've seen it through the good times and the bad times. We moved in just after the Jubilee, and then obviously when the Queen passed, it was chaos because there's just people everywhere and flowers everywhere. So. As sad as the time that was, it was a pretty amazing place to be at that time with all the flowers and bits.
Yeah, well. So what's the difference between creative director and a design director?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask. I knew you were going to ask this question. So I think every business kind of has different names for different things. There'd be some places where creative directors are top of the tree. There'll be some places where design directors are top of the tree. So my boss, James, is a design director. So he's group design director across. I suppose from our point of view, as role of creative director, we have our little team. So we work in pods and kind of are responsible for the day-to-day design output from our teams, essentially. So we have our own projects, but kind of overseeing what our teams do and helping them through that creative process. And James kind of sits as design director more on probably the wider strategy and the wider design side. So again, depending on who you ask, they give you different things, but ours is probably more the day-to-day boots on the ground, and James is more of that kind of business strategy led stuff. But again, he's our mentor, and he's somebody we can ask the questions to when we don't know the answers that the team have asked. So
that's cool. I did, yeah. You see the two things, but it's quite interchangeable, isn't it? So it's like
absolutely, and like I said, you'll get different people from different things.
Yeah, totally. So Jordy, you actually had your own freelancing as well for a bit. Was that workplace design or?
So I probably started in the industry not in a probably normal manner, I would say. So I didn't go to uni, came to the industry, I say late. I was early from working point of view, but late from that side of things. So kind of fell into a role. I've always been surrounded by construction. So my dad or my parents owned a shop fitting company. So like school holidays at 12, I was on site painting walls and making a mess and doing whatever I could sort of thing to help out. So I've always had it around me. And then I started going down this route, and then ended up working sort of side by side, sort of with dad, I suppose. I say side by side with dad, where I did a bit of stuff on site, kind of learnt the trade, as it were, which gave us a good, really good understanding as to how stuff's built, which is super important.
Kind of useful.
Kind of useful. And then on the side of that, it was kind of trying to do as much freelance stuff to create a portfolio to then be able to go to a business and go, right, I've got some credibility behind me now to say, I've done this, I've been paid for this, because I didn't have the uni degree. You kind of going, right, I'm starting from the bottom and having to prove myself from it very early on. So it was great. It was a good learning curve to be doing it, to learn new mistakes as you go. And I'd probably, like, to anybody who doesn't feel like uni's their route, I don't think be afraid of it. I probably was in the industry 3 years before most people came out of uni. Yeah. So you're 3 years further forward then, and you're boots on the ground experience. So it's been a different way into market, but it's been a good one.
It's super unusual to hear that, and why it is because I did the same.
Okay, right.
So I never ever speak to someone. Everyone's been to uni. I just came straight out, and then started like earning while you're learning sort of thing, and just like proper sort of great basic.
I think that's always a bit of a barrier to start with as well, from age, from experience. You're kind of going, all of these people coming out of uni are going to be super experienced. They're going to know so much. They're going to know so much more than me. But when you kind of get to that point and you're in, and you've been in for a couple of years, and then the uni students start coming in who are a similar age to you, you start to understand that the practicalities of what you've learned far outweigh anything you learn in a classroom. And that's not me saying don't go to uni, don't do it. That's me saying that both paths are just as important and doable, I suppose.
And it's worked for you.
Yeah.
And it didn't come out of like that time with the debt as well. That's so that's I always thought about.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to not have hanging over you.
Yeah, so no, I'm not slagging off people who've been to uni, because I know that most people have, like, and it's great, like people really get ahead with it and everything. It's just my path wasn't like that, and I never really talk to many people that don't. So that's
I think from my side as well, I think I'd have struggled at uni. I think at that time I've probably changed as I've got slightly older, but the mentality of having to do structured things and be structured at certain times, I'd have been one of these people who is a week out from a deadline and stays up every hour of every night to get it done, rather than the 4 weeks that you've had to do it, or 6 weeks, just because pressure is a massive driver of mine. And I find that my best creative ideas come under a little bit of pressure. That being said, we'll talk about a little bit later on storytelling and stuff. I'm sure will be probably different to that, but yeah, it's something I've learned as I've grown.
Yeah. So how did you get from shop fitting to workplace? So it's because it opened up, or
it was kind of a point of time. So I'm based on the South Coast and kind of grew up on the South Coast, and then my parents are from sort of Northampton way. So there was an opportunity. We all kind of moved back towards Northampton, and it was a kind of a time where it was like, right, I can flee the nest, as it were. My only goal was to work in London. I wanted to get to London, and it was kind of, how can I get there without going into London straight away? So basically got to a point, threw my CV at every business I could possibly find, and then was kind of lucky enough to go and start working for a company called Accent Office Interiors, which is now Habit Action. So Michelle, who you had on, I worked with Michelle towards the back end when I went back there, but I kind of worked there and was the first designer in. So again, learning the very hard way, where you go into a business, they've got no internal design, and you end up wearing every hat across that business, where you're technical design, you're creative design, you're pitching, you're doing whatever, and kind of any questions creatively come to you. So I kind of fell into it that way, because it was just the way, it was the opportunity that came to me at the time, I suppose.
No, that's nice. So you mentioned storytelling. Is that just a bit of a gimmick or a buzzword, or what is trend you're jumping on?
I think it's one of them. I think for me, it's a huge foundation of what I do, but I don't necessarily think it is for everybody. And there's not a right and a wrong in that. The amazing part of us being designers is that we're all slightly different, right? So the way you get different designs out of people is different ways of thinking and stuff. So, but for me, it's a huge foundation as to what I do, because I find it very, very difficult to design without some sort of why and some sort of story, because it kind of allows me to stay on track. As a designer, you get the joy of sort of having imposter syndrome a lot. So you go, oh, am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right things? But by kind of having that why and that story from very, very early on, it allows me to counteract any questions my mind might take me and go, no, this is my concept, this is my story, let's bring it back. And I think it's a huge part of what I do. So I'm not going to say it's a gimmick, or I'm not going to say it's a kind of buzzword, but I think it might evolve and might change its name over years and the way it looks at it. But I think it's a huge part of what I do.
And has it always been a big part of what you do, or was there a particular time in your career when you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I must like?
Yeah. So I think once I'd moved into London, so I went and worked for an architectural practice called Scott Brownrigg.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a massive learning curve for me. You kind of go from a small D&B company to this enormous business that work on these massive projects, and And I work with some really, really great designers there that you kind of then open your eyes to go, okay, there is thought, there's thinking, there's a story that sits behind all of this. And it just got clicked and went, this is the way that I need to design, because it makes my life so much easier in my own head. You get stuck in a bit of a safe space when you don't have a story, where you go, let's rinse and repeat and do that. And D&B, I think maybe 5 or 10 years ago, or probably 10 years ago when I started in the industry, got a bad name for that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've seen in the last 6 or 7 years, it's changed drastically to say, actually, there's as much creativity, there's as much new thinking going on in D&B, and probably, if not more, than there is in the trad world, because of pace. And how quickly we get stuff. So I think probably working there and working in that trad world, where you've got a little bit more time to think about design and think about what you're designing, just help open my eyes to go, actually, this is a massive part of what I do, and how I can design, and how I sort of start projects.
Yeah. So how do you, if you were to, how do you like uncover a brand story? Like, what's your process for that, or what are you looking for?
So I think for me, it doesn't just have to be a brand story or a client story. I think it's just having a bit of an understanding to go, right, I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into the business that you're talking to, or the client that you're talking to understand what the building's like, what they're like, what their tone of voice is externally and internally, and brand guidelines are huge on that. And then understand what their vision is, to lean into the storytelling kind of narrative. That client is your main character in your story. Like, they are that person, or that client, or that team that you are taking through that story and taking through those journeys. You're just building the story around them as how to get there and what the outcome is. So I think for me, it's kind of trying to get under their skin as early as possible. We have 2 different routes where we go. You get loads and loads of face time with the client, so you can ask those intriguing questions of kind of pickets and certain ideas you've got. And other times we don't speak to the client at all until the pitch or until a mid-bid. So you kind of have to go and do that deep dive on your own, where it might be that I'll spend the first day, 2 days of a process with the team, go and find as much information about this business as possible. And then let's sit down and go, that sounds good. That could be something we lean on. That could be something we lean on. That could be something we lean on. And all of a sudden it then sort of unfolds. And you'll get some briefs that come in and some sort of tenders that come in where they'll go, sustainability is huge for us. And for us as a B Corp business, it helps because it's sort of ingrained within what we do. So if we're finding it difficult to find a hook or a sort of tangible story that sits with it, we then go down, how does the building work? What's the architecture of the building? Is there history within the building? Is there history within the area as a concept? Pulling in then some of those sustainability elements that come with it as well. So it's that kind of early in-depth thinking that really helps, I think, to sort of start that foundation that everything's then built on.
I mean, yeah, I love it. And I love projects that have got that much substance. I don't really know quite what the right word is here, but I would go substance like behind it all. So it's like got this like proper foundation, and then everything's built off that. What's coming straight to my head though, Jordy, is that I hear D&B is like fast paced, like you've got no time to return a tender. I hear people saying that literally just deadlines are up at night trying to finish off with it. So how do, like, 2 precious days, how can we afford them? Yeah. How do you like kind of convince the client that you're gonna, I don't know, yeah, how does that look internally?
I think from my side, it's, if you can lay a good foundation early on, it saves you time in the process, and it saves you that kind of mentality of going, you could be a week down the line without that kind of 2 days of thinking and still be no clearer as to where you are. Great, we can crack on with plans, we can crack on with sort of some of those elements, but when it comes to kind of the essence of that design, the essence of that story, that 2 days is invaluable to me. There's business mentality that you sharpen the saw, and you have 2 people who are trying to chop a tree down. One spends 10, 15 minutes stopping to sharpen his saw, so his saw's always sharp, not blunt. He'll chop the tree down a lot quicker than the guy who's just chopping and chopping and chopping. And it's kind of taking heed and taking stock to say, actually, I can afford this 2 days at the beginning because it's going to save me 2 weeks in the back end. And I think sometimes you don't always have to have the whole thing figured out. If you've done the bit at the front end, you can kind of go, right, there's a loose concept here. Let's drive with this, see where we get to with interaction with clients. And then we know if we're onto a good thing or maybe need to slight pivot and change to something else.
It's big picture thinking, isn't it?
It's having the I suppose the bravery and don't get me wrong, there's times where it doesn't happen and we go, actually we don't have time to do this, and we have to look at how that strategy goes in a different way, or how we're going to build that story in a slightly different way. And it might be that sometimes you get it from a client and it's laid out in front of you and you go, great, I can hit the ground running, because they're very, very clear as to what they want, or you've had a really good conversation with them to start with, or you're in early and you're talking to them before a tender comes out or before something. So you're kind of in their minds and in their shoes as early as possible. And I think that's the key to it all.
Yeah, how often I would always imagine that you talk to them first, but
it really depends on which way it comes in. There's you have different avenues to a project coming in. You're in early, the BD team have done a great job and you're talking directly to the client front off. There's others that come through project managers. So you go, there's going to be an RFP come out for you to look at a new project.
Mm-hmm.
That then is when you get your formal kind of tender. You've got 6 weeks to bring this back. Go, there's a meeting here with the client. That's when your pitch date is, or it's when your submission date is. It's always great when you can speak to the client as early on and be on that journey with them. But this industry is super competitive, so it doesn't always work like that way.
No, I can imagine. Have you got a story of when you've done this with a client where you've taken them on this journey? The design is shaped by the story, and how like, you've got a good example.
I mean, I think storytelling works really well in a competitive situation. So probably more in that competitive mode, because you are putting all your eggs in one basket and going, we are hanging our hat on this and we are going for it. I've got a story. So we did a project a couple of years ago for a big food and beverage business, multi-branded, super like nostalgic British brands, like household names, and everyone's probably got them in their cupboard. We went in with the story of like full nostalgia. These are amazing things. It reminds us of our Sunday roast as a bit of an example, and kind of how they've played such a massive part in people's childhoods and growing up in nostalgia. And we won the project, and I remember going in to meet the new MD, the new CEO at the time, and he basically ripped the concept up and threw it out. He said, I've spent the last 2 years trying to get away from us being a nostalgic brand and looking at how we can be a forward-thinking brand. And you kind of go, your heart kind of melts a little bit. But we won the project because we had a concept that we hung our hat on and went, you know what, this is what we're going with. They could see the thinking behind everything that we'd done. Although it wasn't necessarily right at the time, we'd thought about so much of it that they went, these guys can probably pivot. And if we give them an actual brief, they can do the same thing again. And it evolved, and it didn't change drastically. We just tweaked the kind of some of the materials we use, some of the thinking behind some of the spaces, and ended up being a reasonably cool project. So it was a fun one.
So you went all in, hung your hat.
Hung a hat, and it kind of got thrown back at me. But
wrong thing, mate.
So, but it worked out well in the end. It was kind of one of those things that you go, okay, there's a lesson learned there. But actually, how great a story is that you can be so wrong and still get so far by having something tangible and a reason why.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's quite different, like in a sense, but if you're like interviewing for people or like job roles or whatever, which I'm sure you do, it's not always necessarily them having the right answers. It's like how they think.
Absolutely.
That's the exciting bit. Like, how wicked I can mold this person or whatever, and this person will really flourish here. And it's not actually so much about them getting the answers right, because it's just interpretation.
Absolutely. I remember I can't think where else. I was once asked a question in an interview as to who would win out of a fight between a ninja and a pirate. And you just kind of go, sorry? And there is no right answer to it, but it's that kind of thinking going, well, this person would do this, and this person would do this, and this is how they would come this and this and this. And it is exactly that. It's you getting into the mind of that person and going, okay, cool, there's something there that we can work with, as opposed to going, pirate, great, why? Don't know. So there is that kind of why and that thinking and reasoning back to it.
Definitely a ninja there.
I can't remember what my answer was, so
it's definitely a ninja. Oh, dear, that's good. And then we're going on, and like obviously this project that you mentioned, this nostalgic British brand.
Yeah.
How does that impact the people that are using the space, or how do you tell the story, I guess, in the space? Because so much thinking's gone into that. Really sad when it gets lost, and even I find out, I'm going off on one now, but with their products, you've got like really great stories behind them, and like the reasoning to why we did that. But how to make people know that is kind of quite hard without being clumsy.
Yeah, and obvious. I think obvious is the biggest thing, and I think that's the biggest challenge we have when you find a concept, find a story. I worked on a big travel project where you're going down a journey, and the thinking was all about wanderlust and the reasons why people travel. And it's very then difficult to design something where you go, let's put them in a hot air balloon, or let's put them here or here. And it's so incredibly obvious. They go, this just feels a little bit tacky now. And I think there's an element of kind of discovery that you want to add into a project, and those conversation points that kind of feed their way through the team. So you end up working super closely with the client team, and you kind of start talking about some of these, we're doing this for this reason, we're using this material for this reason, we've put X amount of so-and-so here and here, that then filters its way down, that them as a client team go, I've taken this little nugget away, and they show somebody around as a client or a new employee, and they'll throw that into their kind of explanation of the workspace. And all of a sudden you get this Chinese whispers effect where everybody starts to understand certain things, or you sit in a different seat and you see something and you go, oh, that's cool, I've never noticed that before. And I think that's the clever way of how you can intertwine storytelling and kind of make sure that it's not super obvious, but it's not lost. And there's that discovery element where you're not putting everything front and center. There's these bits that kind of people will notice over time. And point out to somebody else, and then they'll point something else out, and all of a sudden that story's filtered through the staff and become a cool thing that they can tell each other. I had a text from a client the other day. We've just finished again another food and beverage brand in Uxbridge. So again, multifaceted business. And we put a big acrylic box with a load of purple beads in that are supposed to symbolize blackcurrants. And they were doing a quiz, and it was like, how many blackcurrants are in that box? And there's like 14,000 of these blackcurrants, sort of purple beads in there. But that then gets thrown into their culture. Do you know, there's 14,000 blackcurrants in that box there? A very, very simple, easy thing that we might not necessarily think about front end. Something else from a client side might hang on to it and say, oh, this is a cool little fact and a cool little discovery that they then can move around the space and kind of talk around and speak to other people about. So I think it's really important that there's a discovery element of those things.
It's almost leaning in to the organic, like fireside, like olden day countryside, like in a heart, like grandpa, granny telling the kids.
It's exactly that. And I think it is, that's the essence of storytelling, right? That's where the storytelling has come from. It's come from everybody sat around, like I said, sat around a campfire. Well, there's no TVs, there's no this, or you go on holiday, whatever it might be, and generations telling stories about certain folklores or whatever it might be, and that filtering through, and everybody takes their own kind of stance on things, or might add something in, or might add something, and all of a sudden this thing evolves before you even realize that it's evolved. So it's that, yes, the essence of it, I suppose.
It's kind of grown arms and legs.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good. And what's something that you said, right, going back to the start, you said every designer approaches it differently, and I do respect that as well, because I do think people all have their own way and their own story, if you like, to get to their end goal. But what are some of the mistakes that you see designers coming in, maybe when they're juniors or new, which kind of stop that story?
It's hard. I don't necessarily think you could, like, I'm not going to go and say, oh, they make this mistake because of this X, Y, Z, because I think those mistakes are what make great designers.
Yeah.
That's where you kind of get this evolution of a designer who's been through the hardships, been through the mistakes, and understands the reason why they've made it and how to come out better the other side. So I wouldn't necessarily say there's a mistake made in not telling stories. I've worked with some amazing designers that storytelling isn't at the forefront of their design style, which is absolutely fine because they're very, very good at the other side of things, or very, very good at being able to convey their story or their essence of a design in a different way. But I think it's about kind of trusting yourself. Like I said before, for me, I have to have a story or a why, because it keeps me on track. It goes, any demons that come out the closet where you go, oh, I don't know how I feel about this, or I'm starting to question my design, keep me back in focus and going, no, look, you were super happy with this. The whole team were bought into this. If you start going off on a tangent, you can pull it back in quite easily by going, right, what is my why and why have we done this? And it then makes it very, very easy to discuss with a client or talk to a client about it, because there is a reason for every material you've picked, or every kind of layout you've done, or every reason you've put a certain product in a certain place. And that's very, very easy then to convey to a client. And it then makes it very, very difficult to them to question it, because they can question it and you go, great, absolutely, I'll take your feedback. But for my reason why, this is why we've done it. And it'll always be the something I do at the beginning of every project is kind of go, what's my design statement for this project? So 2 or 3 words, that kind of tagline for the project, about whether that actually needs sustainability, whether that's leaning into concept, whether that's leaning into kind of those small details. What is my tagline for the project, and what is my why for the project? And that then everything pulls into that to be able to talk about it.
I mean, I'm quite like that in life, actually, like a bit, like, because I quite overthink, or
I'm a massive overthinker, and it helps you just to
you do you know what I mean? Like, you think, oh, am I good enough, or is my like?
Absolutely.
I also think it gives you, like, that's giving you like a real sense of confidence as well, like, because you're going to be really sure of yourself. Like, even though you saying now that you overthink from the outside about your clients, you're thinking like, no, this guy is just like on the money.
It makes my life easier to a certain degree, because it means that you know something so well. And that's what I often say to designers and new people who are in the industry. It's like, this thing has come out of your head. You're the only person in that room who knows if you've said something wrong. Okay, your team might go, oh, that's not quite right, or whatever. But if you can say something with confidence, and you can say it, and you can be on that train, and you can say, no, actually, this is my story I'm telling. You're the only person who knows that story's not right.
Yeah.
And if you can get through that battle and go, oh, I might not have said that quite right, but I can bring it back because I'm here, it makes it super powerful, because you can't necessarily, I'm not going to say you can't be wrong, because you can be wrong, but you can't be kind of thrown off of track.
I do know what you mean, though. I do know what you mean about can't be wrong. Like, I always loved English because I could write, and it was just what I wanted to say. Like, it was just what I thought. But whereas maths, you could be wrong, like, because 1 + 2 still doesn't equal 4. Like, it's a backup, but it's just true. And so I love that, like, in terms of interpretation.
Absolutely.
And you can, lean into that. But no, I'm a big overthinker. So, and I find a lot of creative people are.
I think I would be worried if a creative wasn't an overthinker, and you can have confident or hasn't experienced overthinker or hasn't experienced imposter syndrome, because you're probably not pushing your boundaries enough. You're probably in your safe space and going, okay, I'm doing this as a safe thing. I think those elements come when you're slightly out of your comfort zone, and you'll start questioning, going, oh, should I just go back into my little routine? But that's when amazing things come, right? When you just step outside, or where you can push those boundaries a little bit, it helps massively.
Yeah. No, I'm so with you on that. What's the most unusual thing you've uncovered in one of your deep dives?
I'm not going to go not unusual. I think there's some really cool things. I think one of the other things, without sounding, and my clients, you'll see this, will probably be terrified when I say this, but you go on a journey with that person as well. So whether that's thought leaders in businesses or the clients you're working with directly, to kind of get an understanding of them as well. So looking through YouTube, have they done podcasts? Have they done YouTube videos? How do they talk? What's the type of ways that they talk? So you uncover some funny things when you start looking that deep. Nothing that's too bad, thankfully, but you kind of, it's about understanding the client and the business as much as possible. So you kind of have to play into that stalker role a little bit, where you're kind of going, right, I understand that there might be, for example, somebody who's got a real love for a certain sport, or when you go to their office, they might have something little on their desk that you kind of go, okay, that's cool. That gives me an insight into who they are as a person. And then when you start doing visuals and creative things, just adding some of that back into, you visualize an MD's desk and he's got a rugby ball in the background, or he's got something that you can kind of tie back into it. It gives you that sense of personality and sort of personal storytelling that then really feeds into that person you're presenting to, and they pick things up, and all of a sudden they go, oh, actually, what else is in there? And when I talk about the little kind of Easter eggs or the discovery moments, some of those things are really cool to start playing and adding into visuals and stuff. And you kind of play a bit of a game where you go, oh, what can we get in there that they might not see the first time, but they might see the second or the third? So and I went off on a bit of a tangent to what I found. It's probably me trying to avoid the question, if I'm honest, but
no, I'm thinking I want to see some of your visuals. You had to be so sharp. I love it. It's actually brilliant. It's such a good overview into your process and how it's nice. I love things like sustainability or storytelling or I don't know, whatever. Like when they're not just buzzwords, but people have actually integrated it and making it
absolutely
something really deep.
And I think sustainability is a key one. Like again, Duncan, who's our head of sustainability, and the whole team work incredibly hard to make sure that it's part of our process, not just us getting to the end of a project and going, right, how can we shoehorn some sustainability into this to go, we've used this or this or this. It's kind of played a massive part in our story from the start. And I think as designers, we often do it where we might get to the end of a project and we start talk to the sustainability team or during a project, and we kind of, they then go, well, what sustainable materials have you used? And you panic and you go, well, I don't know if I have, until you start looking at the materials you have, because it's kind of just ingrained in you that the ones that we go to, the products that we're starting to use, we know the story so well that it becomes our go-to, and it means that it's not just a gimmick, a buzzword. It's something that's ingrained in the DNA of us as designers.
Yeah, what you pick, what you find. Yeah, no, I like it. And is there before we go, because time, I know it always feels so quick, and have an agency that actually do all of the work for us on space, and they always say like, you've got to keep it a bit short, and I'm just like, I start chatting, there's so many more questions for you. But yeah, what I was going to say was, is there a podcast or a book that you have read or reading, like listen to or whatever, that you recommend?
There's probably a couple of things I would say, to let you in behind the curtain. It's probably a little bit why my brain works.
Like that saying.
Well, yeah, probably why my brain works is I'm a huge fan of Disney, and I say Disney in the sense of them as a business and them as what they do in creativity wise, not necessarily Snow White and everything else, but I was very fortunate as a kid to be able to go to Disneyland quite a bit, and experiencing Disney as a place is incredible. It's the most creative place I think I've ever been, from the smallest details. You're at a park and there's a bus ticket stuck to the side of a kind of luggage tag or whatever it might be, that's then got a code that's then aligns to something that's on a ride, or there's some like really small intricate details, and that's all made by a team of people that work for Disney called the Imagineers, and there's an amazing documentary on Disney Plus, which is all about them as a team, and a kind of story from them being when it first started to where they are now. And they are like a group of 20 creative people that are the mind behind everything that's done. So not from a sort of a film point of view, but then when you get into physical spaces, whether that's stores, whether that's in the parks, whatever that might be, they're the ones who come up with all of these amazing intricate ideas, and that discovery that you go on as a kid or as an adult or whatever it might be, hiding little Mickey Mouses left, right and center within stuff that you wouldn't necessarily see the first time. They're the people that sit behind it, and it's an amazing watch for any creative, I think. From a podcast point of view, I probably don't listen to too many creative podcasts. Audio books I listen to. I spend a lot of time in the car. Again, Ride of a Lifetime, which is by Bob Iger, who is I don't know if he still was the CEO at Disney, is one of them. I can't remember the book's name, but there is, I think it's called Creativity Inc., which is the guy who founded Pixar. So again, that Disney trend that goes in it. And just hearing how they tackle creativity in a completely different way, and something that they have to come up with something completely new. And some of the ideas, I mean, you watch Disney film, they're mental. Some of them, you kind of go, where has this come from? So to hear the creativity and thinking behind it is super, super interesting. So yeah, I'd probably say them two as books and Imagineering.
Imagineers, I like that.
They're a really cool bunch of people. So that'd probably be my dream job if it ever comes up to go and work for them. But it's
I'll let them know.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked on a Disney project?
No, there's a couple that have been in and around the business. But no, I've not quite got there. It's probably a good thing, because if I did, I'd probably go too far and would probably end up being in a difficult situation. So probably a good thing I don't.
Oh, no, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Jordy.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate your time, and no one's spoken about storytelling like you have, or so passionately, or it's so deeply ingrained as you have. So it's amazing listen and education really for everyone that's follows the show. So really grateful.
No, not a problem at all. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you everyone for tuning in again. This episode of Jordy Dent. And like I always say, algorithm loves you or loves the show, or loves whatever, when you do the whole follow and rate business thing. I'm no techie geezer, but if you can do your thing, give us a rate. It helps us get more great guests like Jordy on. Thank you very much.